You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Tyler Bunch is a puppeteer, an actor, a voiceover artist, an Emmy-nominated director, and an Emmy-winning producer, and he's today's guest on 15 Minutes With. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That intro sounds so fancy when I make you say it like that.
Exactly. Well, I had to think long and hard so that I didn't mess it up. And I hope that we get to talk about all these things. But I would like to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Grew up, my ad hoc, real quick, just to throw it out there, answer is Tulsa, Oklahoma. But the truth is all around the South. My father was in the midst of pursuing a collegiate career and subsequent career in educational theater at the collegiate level. So him finishing his degrees, getting various summer gigs, had me moving 18 times between the age of 0 and 15.
Wow.
Oklahoma was where we moved back after my parents were divorced and where I went for all of high school. But I lived in that time, born in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, lived in Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, Texas, Louisiana, several places in each.
I was going to ask what your sort of first creative interest is, but it seems that your parents were, or at least your dad was super creative.
For the most part. From the time I could speak, I wanted to be a zoologist, a naturalist. That was going to be my bag. I knew every animal that was on the Nature Channel. I could tell you where they lived and what they ate with the TV still on mute. I was so into the whole genealogy and current struggles of those critters trying to survive in nature and what they were up against in terms of man's encroachment. But if I wanted to spend time with Dad, I needed to know how to pick up a hammer and work in the scene shop at the theater and be there for the summer programs that he would get us enrolled in so that they didn't have to pay for other summer programs because they were always free for him with whatever university he was connected with. So both my sister and I wound up with theater as a hobby. And so then when my parents were divorced and I moved to Tulsa, my emphasis was still, biology and advanced biology and all that stuff in school. But I found the only place I felt at home was theater class.
Yeah, you strike me as someone who myself has a degree in theater, in acting, as someone who loves the theater.
That is, truer words could not be said. I really appreciate its impact. And obviously, it's got a very deep root with me in terms of my upbringing and exposure and theater just being part of effectively everyday life growing up. But it's growing from a pastime to a passion really kind of happened alongside my pubic hair. And I so appreciate all that theater and the theater arts have to give to our society as a whole. I don't think I could ever leave it now.
Now, you mentioned that while you were still in school, you were kind of studying on the biology and stuff. But did you do theater stuff in school, like in high school and stuff?
My first foray came through the theater arts instructor in high school at Thomas Alva Edison High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the form of competitive forensics, which a lot of people know out there. Mostly it gets its credibility through Lincoln Douglas debate and team debates, and it's more geared toward lawyers and the political side of things. But as those kids lose their various rounds and they're there for a 2 or 3 day competition wherever it's going on and they don't really have much else to do, these sideline things started getting created to occupy their creative minds. So monologue competitions and dramatic duets and humorous duets where people would do 6 to 10 minute scenes from plays and acting different characters, or doing an individual event where you played multiple characters from a scripted piece. Those were ultimately created to occupy these guys who fell out of the debate, but then they got such a steam of their own that that competitive forensics was my bag. I didn't do any of the debate stuff. I only did the acting stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And I achieved some, pretty good notoriety, getting to state and all that crap like you do in other competitive scenarios in high school.
Yeah. And did you continue on to college? Did you go to college?
Yeah. More at the behest of my parents than anything else. Just getting a degree so that if you needed a job, you had something that would give you a little bit of a leg up for the jobs that paid more than minimum wage. I started at Oklahoma State University with a small scholarship that meant I had to audition for everything that came along and had to take whatever role was offered. And I know now it was a piddly amount of money, but at the time it seemed like a lot in terms of a college education. So I spent a lot of time in the theater department at OSU. And then my father, by then, had gotten his doctorate and was working at a small school in Florida where the tuition was free for kin. Mm-hmm. So both my sister and I were effectively forced to go to St. Petersburg, Florida, to finish our undergraduate degrees. Hers in psychology. She's a therapist. And I got a stupid theater arts degree, which is worth so much.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite productions at Oklahoma State?
I really appreciated, we did a production of the musical Working, based on the book by Studs Terkel, some music by James Taylor. It got a little bit of Tony honors in its day. I can't remember. It was in the early 70s, I think. And later it became an even more impassioned connection because my father was also very into that show, and so he directed me in a secondary production of it, as well as my sister when I was down in Florida, which we then took as a group to the theater festival in Avignon, France, that happens every summer.
Wow.
So that was like the end of my collegiate career, was going with my father and my sister to France for a month and performing that show. So working both at Oklahoma State and later on, had a very heartfelt place in my collegiate history. Managed to get cast as Captain Hook as a sophomore, which in a program at Oklahoma State University where there were graduate students, there was a graduate level program. I pissed a lot of the graduate students off, actually, that this fucking sophomore got, Captain Hook. But it was a really amazing production and really talented cast and very well done. They had a good bit of money to pull off productions there at Oklahoma State, so I really enjoyed that a lot.
Now, after you graduated, did you go on to grad school?
I did not.
Did not? Okay. And then did you just start auditioning for things? Is that out in the world? Or
sort of. I was a little wimpy in that my bursar, if you will, the woman at the office at Eckerd College, had kind of did a little bit of a boo-boo. I didn't realize it, but when I finished what I thought was my last semester, they said, well, you're too many credits short. You need to take some summer classes. So I finished my 4 years. By the way, in between Oklahoma State University and Eckerd College, I did the Disney College program and pushed buttons on the ride Body Wars down at Orlando. But when I thought I was going to graduate, she said, no, you're short. I'm like, so I took the summer courses, and then when I went in to say, here, I'm done, and we went over my record, okay, cool, so you did this, you did that, and I went, wait, what? That one summer course I did, or pardon me, the spring semester. Oh, yeah, I saw that you had like 9 credits for that. We never give that many credits, so I changed it. I said, what? No, I negotiated with my professors. So I wound up having to go to school for a summer, but because it's this little small private school, they also didn't do the official walk except for once a year. Mm-hmm. So I had theoretically graduated with enough credits, but she had arbitrarily changed how many credits I had, so I took a whole summer worth of courses for nothing. And then had to wait that full year, or at that point, that full 9 months, to do the official walk. And I wanted to do that before I went off anywhere, so I thought I'd get a job. Through a bizarre set of circumstances, my stepmother, my father's wife at the time, worked for a governmental wing that dealt with drug rehabilitation and other programs. They were doing the first pilot of this thing called the Disney Crew, this anti-drug program designed and put out by the Disney organization in Orlando, which they had done in the Orlando area and at schools and stuff and live performances for people. That was a, say no to drugs kind of thing for kids. And this pilot program was coming to the other coast, to the Tampa Bay part of the Florida where I was. And my stepmother happened to be the one in charge. And so I got her to hire the guy who had taught me monitor puppetry by this time as the head of that program. And then he, in turn, made sure I got a very worthwhile audition. So my first job right out of college was doing the Disney crew, working for the mouse yet again for 9 months, saving up enough money to move to New York as soon as that job was completed. So the summer of 93.
Now, you mentioned the puppetry. When did your love for puppetry begin?
Apparently, according to my mom, I had an interest in puppetry because as a toddler, my maternal grandfather built my sister and I a small collapsible puppet stage. And we had these little hand puppets that we would play with. I don't remember being that into it. But my sister, later years, became a fan of Fraggle Rock, as did I. So, and this is much later, when I'm in early teens, having HBO in the summer and having Fraggle Rock I started getting really interested in how the images that I was seeing on the screen were coming about. I was like, wow, how are they doing that? Where's the person? How are they hiding them? That one's mechanical. That one that looks like real, but then it's part mechanical. How's that one working? And just the whole literal achievement of it became fascinating to me. And about that same time, my high school drama coach suggested that I contact this woman who was looking for marionettists to perform in a local marionette theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So my first summer job was working as a marionettist. And I got pretty good at it, but it didn't really grow on me. I've since come to kind of very much generalize the passions of puppeteers as being equated to a dancer mentality. Kind of gravitates more toward the marionettes, kind of a dancer or sculptor-y visual image person, whereas those more interested in acting and the precision of the dramatic moment, at least in my compare and contrast, gravitate more toward puppets that you have more of a physical contact with and relate to more directly. Flash forward to during my collegiate years, a friend of the family said, "Hey, you like puppets, right?" and turned me on to this ad for a gentleman whose name was Todd Coyle, who had been hired as a local hire when Jim Henson was doing things in Florida for the Disney company, and they needed people to kind of fill in background stuff. And he, being a church puppeteer all his life, was suddenly introduced to this world of monitor puppetry and puppetry for television, and it kind of blew his brain up. And he practiced by himself for 6 months, and then eventually put an ad in the paper because he realized the only way he was going to get better is if he had people to work with. Mm-hmm. So this ad was like, I don't want money, I can't pay money, but I want to teach people how to do this in the hopes that we'll get work together as a group. And so that became my hobby in college, and started growing into a passion in the later years, so that when I moved to New York, assuming I was going to be pursuing an actor's path, foray into musical theater, and then hoping that would somehow transition into camera work, TV and film, the puppetry was just one of the tools in the kit. And I took the compilation tape of stuff I had done in my college years and sent it to the Jim Henson Company with the hopes that I would get on their roster.
And did you?
Not really. I called about, I want to say 3 weeks after I sent the tape. And I know now I was speaking to Renee Rochelle, who was the talent coordinator for the New York branch of the Jim Henson Company at that time, and helped to organize whatever projects were going on, including the folks that were involved in Sesame Street. And I said, "Hey, young puppeteer, I sent a tape." She's like, "Yeah, we get a lot of tapes." Oh, she's like, "Oh, we'll get around to it. It may just take a while. Thank you for your call." Click. And being a rather impatient 23-year-old, I guess, brat, about a week later, I called up and lied through my teeth and said, "I'm sorry to bother you again. I called before. I've just been offered this job that's going to take me out of town for a while. And I'm not expecting anything, but I would much rather stay in town if there was any possibility of working with your company. Is there any way somebody could look at my tape just to tell me whether or not I've got a shot, just so I have all the information set to decide on this other opportunity? Oh, well, let me call you back. About an hour later, phone rings. I get someone who can look at it tomorrow. Is that too late? I was like, no, that's fine. Such a manipulative jerk. And it was Kevin Clash that looked at it, and he invited me in to be a spectator on Sesame Street. And I got on their long list, which, of course, meant working a total of maybe 12 days over the first 4 years of my association with the company whenever they needed a lot of people at Sesame for big group scenes. Until Mitchell Kriegman, who was at that time under a development deal for Henson and had just been given the green light for his pilot for the show Bear in the Big Blue House, was filling out the rest of the cast and had been through most of the list that Henson would provide at that time to producers of the A-list puppeteers, and hadn't found anyone that he liked. And thank goodness for Joey Mazzarino. Joey kind of threw my name out in the midst of one of their discussions, and a few other of my peers who had come in around the same time, and we were all given the opportunity to audition on the same day a few weeks before production began. And I was fortunate enough to be cast as Trilo and Pop of the Otters, Pip and Pop, where I shared screen time with Peter Linz for the initial cast of that wonderful program.
Yeah, and was this the first big project that you worked on?
No, the thing that I did in college, after working with Todd for a while, we wound up securing a 5-minute segment on a local kids show. Our segment was called Rex and Randy's Room. And shortly after we joined the program, it started winning the local Cable Ace Award, which I thought was kind of cool. Isn't that neat? People in Tampa Bay think we're awesome. And didn't know, really until I got cast in the Bear in the Big Blue House, that the show that we were doing single camera style on Saturdays for $10 a Saturday so that we could buy ourselves a meal for 3 years. The Cable Ace Award we were winning, which used to be a bigger deal, it doesn't even really exist anymore, was the National Cable Ace Award for local programming, which we won for 3 years in a row. So once people actually saw my tape at Henson, they actually kind of already knew about the show, and I didn't know that. I didn't find that out until we were in the middle of the first season of Bear. So I had some exposure, but nowhere near the workload that's necessary for a 3-camera kids narrative where you're generating a minimum of, an episode every 2 to 3 days. The speed and the technical ability you need for a show like that, I was in no way prepared for. I was woefully underachieving in that first season. I can't even watch the first season, and really worked my butt off to get better so that by seasons 2 and 3, I felt like I was holding my own against the likes of Peter Linz and Noel McNeil and Jim Krupa, who were doing, such amazing work. So that was some hard knocks.
Yeah, but a heck of a learning experience.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So every day you learn. And truthfully, with any craft you really care enough about, if you're giving your all every time you do it, you always kind of learn something new. But at that time, the learning curve was huge.
Well, and I'm not purposely skipping over a bunch of things, but kind of moving up to today, you work a lot more on Sesame Street now, right?
True.
And what is that like after, you said you did 12 days the first 4 years, but now to be somebody who is higher up on that list.
Right. What's kind of a feel good about that whole situation is that Sesame is one of those jobs that once you have it, you kind of have it for life, i.e., Carol Spinney and Fran chose to leave, and Jerry didn't necessarily choose, but he was there every day he possibly could until the end. It's just one of those experiences that if you're fortunate enough to get asked to play in that sandbox, you never want to leave it. It was pretty amazing the first time I kind of realized that the trial period of those first couple of what they call seasonal guarantees, which is when you get a contract that means you're going to be there for the whole season, The first time I realized that they were going to keep coming, that it wasn't, the trial period was over.
Yeah.
There isn't a description for the feeling to know that you're part of this amazingly iconic thing that is probably going to still live for a long time, and you've been asked to be part of the fold. Because I truly have to say, the ensemble that is part of that show now, as has always been, are such a consummate group of talented professionals that support each other and figure out how to make every moment on the show stronger and touch the kids that much more and do the job that it's supposed to do that much more thoroughly. Everyone there cares about the product so much and cares about the show so much and their characters. To be able to be considered part of that group is one of the highlights of my career and always will be.
Well, let's. We mentioned at the beginning. We mentioned the Emmys, so
right.
let's talk about these because we promised our listeners.
Yeah, right.
What was your Emmy nomination in directing for?
The show that Mitchell Kriegman subsequently produced for PBS with Sony. It's a Big, Big World. Was a visually stunning show. I think these what we call tabletop, which is loosely based on the Japanese Bunraku style of puppets done in a chroma key or ultimate effect, where you don't see the puppeteers because the image is being digitally enhanced and the puppeteers are being replaced by a digitally created background. So Snook the sloth, the giant sloth, and his family members, if you will, of other species that hang around with him in a similar vein to Bear in the Big Blue House, live in this digitally created tropical rainforest. And I was fortunate enough to direct several episodes of the first season, and that first season was nominated for Outstanding Directing in Children's Programming. There were a few of us who had directed enough episodes to be considered up for that award, including Tim Lagasse and Mitchell himself and a very talented man named Dean Gordon. We didn't win, unfortunately, but still was an amazing experience doing that style of directing, dealing with the digital layers and composites and figuring out interesting ways to have those 3D creatures which are being translated into 2D and layers inhabit that world in a believable way and interact with one another and with the environment. It's a really fascinating challenge, and the show was a lot of fun to be a part of. And
so you were nominated there, but you won for producing. So what was your producing win for?
The producing one was, my official title was creative producer because I helped to create the overall universe, if you will, of the show Word World, which was ultimately a computer-generated show where all the characters inhabiting the world were formed by the letters that make the name of the creature that they are. So a frog, you can see in his profile, the letters F-R-O-G actually create the shape of his body. And there's a bear and a pig and a duck, and the objects in the world, airplane or mountain or cave, the basic profile form of whatever the thing is, you can read the word that makes the basic sounds that the kids are trying to learn in order to read. When the gentleman who created that show began, he started with a toy idea where there were these plush-style letters with magnets in them that would attach, but only in certain ways, so that you literally played with the letters of the word dog, and they would only attach to make D-O-N-G, so a kid knows when he plays with D-O-N-G, it makes dog. Mm-hmm. The cognitive connection was amazing. Kids would absorb the whole idea so much more quickly when they had that physical representation, and it was a really, really well thought out idea and very effective. And he wanted to take these toys and give them a vehicle in in a world. And so I had him, he got connected with me because at that time Sesame Street was the, most popular show, and he thought puppets are the way to go. I need to make a show with puppets. So through various clandestine contacts, he wound up getting a hold of me and told me of his idea. So I had him order oversized versions of his toys from China, and I turned them into puppets on my front porch over a couple of weekends. And we shot a teaser reel, which actually Vicky Eibner and Peter Linz were both part of, that were also cast members of Bear in the Big Blue House. Lisa Simon, who was a very talented director-producer at Sesame Workshop, directed it. And it got him some funding, but he made the realization very early on that the puppets for that particular idea, the idea that letters come together and morph into a thing, right there, the word morph, it needed to be computer-generated. So over the 8 years between when we shot this pilot thing and when it became a reality, I was there in a creative capacity helping him flesh out the world and do new versions of the Bibles. And eventually, when the show got on air, the title that I was fortunate enough to get was creative producer. So when it won for outstanding education, or what was it, children's educational program, animated children's educational program, I was fortunate enough that one of the Emmys came in my direction.
That is great.
Yeah.
As we are wrapping up here, I would love to know what's something that right now is maybe creatively inspiring you that maybe people don't know about. Is there some kind of hidden thing that you love? It could be a book, movie, whatever it is that you think more people should check out.
For me, in general, there's a lot of eye candy in kids' TV. A lot of the shows that are just for entertainment value that are out there that kids are consuming. It's hard to get past sometimes the kind of emptiness that they represent. They don't seem to have a lot going on in terms of helping kids manage their lives or go through their days, because they're literally just there for entertainment. But one of the things that's consistently surprising to me is how often these new shows do whatever is going to make the kid laugh, and that suspension of disbelief and staying in the narrative with those characters still exists. Like, whenever SpongeBob has gone from animated to weird real stuff to whatever it is, kids are still along for the ride and they buy into it. And I think it's one of the things we don't give our consuming audience enough credit for, that as long as you invest in the way you're telling the story and the story itself, they're going to go on that ride with you. You don't have to worry so much about whether or not some character doing a funky voice or the visual images changing or whatever it is. They want to go on the ride with you. As long as they're invested in the characters and the storyline, they're going to invest in seeing it through to the end. And I think a lot of the shows that you can just happen upon flipping around the channel right now that you would normally just pass by, somebody spent money making that thing. And you just stop long enough to find something of value in it. If you're open to it, you will see something in it that will help your efforts at storytelling or help your efforts at character creation or whatever it is that you're doing. If you're open to it, something will be sparked.
Excellent. I love it. If people want to check you out online, where can they go?
Unfortunately, right now, it's just going to be IMDb or Facebook. I'm not real good about the website stuff. I should do that.
But you have a Twitter account. Can
I do. That is
check
true.
You out on Twitter.
Tyler_Bunch.
Right. We'll have a link to that in the thing, and a link to your IMDb page as well.
There it is.
Well, Tyler, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you, Grant.
Tyler Bunch is an actor, puppeteer, voiceover artist, producer, and director, and he was today's guest on 15 Minutes With. To follow Tyler on Twitter, just search for his username, Tyler_Bunch. And a link to Tyler's IMDb page will be in the show notes for this episode over at GrantCast.com. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Mer Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wapshall, Twitter user Buttsinggear, aka Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Morino, and Reed Loveland. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And while you're over there in iTunes, be sure to click that subscribe button. That way, when a new episode is released, you'll get it right away. If you have feedback for the show, you can send it directly to me at grant@throwingtoasters.com or get in touch via Twitter, where my username is ToasterBoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back in just 1 week. The GrantCast is copyright 2016, Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.